Good morning. Welcome to this morning service. Uh, Hope all of you are doing well, um, that you have not been adversely affected by the fires and, of course, the pandemic. There have been um, members of the temple who have experienced uh, some close calls, and there were people who have actually experienced some difficulties as a result of the fires. But that seems to be settling down, and hopefully we are out of danger from these fires. But as the experts keep telling us that we are not out of our fire season, and so we need to be vigilant and continue to um, take caution, take precautions to avoid these fires from restarting. But I hope this morning, in the midst of all of this that's going on around us, that we can have at least a little bit of time here in the Hondo, uh, sharing in the Dharma. We begin this morning service with Sambajo, and if you'll please join in the reading of Sambutsuge. Sambutsuge. Namanda, 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 Namanda.
계약구 안넌 거무주시며 생각
시손 진나 신여 계려 신십 정은 너큰 춤 방며 쇼진 인주 If you would please join now in the reading of the three treasures. Hard is it to be born into human life. Now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the teachings of the Blessed One. Now we hear it. If we do not deliver ourselves in the present life, no hope is there that we shall be freed from suffering and sorrow in the ocean of birth and death. Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in Buddha. May we all together absorb into ourselves the principle of your way to enlightenment and awaken in ourselves our supreme will. I take refuge in Dharma. May we all together be submerged in the depth of thy doctrine and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in Sangha. May we all together become units in true accord in your life of harmony, in a spirit of universal brotherhood, freed from the bondage of selfishness. Even through ages of myriads of kalpas, hard is it to hear such an excellent, profound, and wonderful doctrine. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of the Tathagata's teaching. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Again, good morning and welcome to this morning's service. I'd like to begin, although you're supposed to do this all the time as a minister, you're trained to do this, but I have a lack of discipline. But this morning I'd like to share with you a couple of verses from a series of verses written by Shinran, and this is entitled Hymns Based on the Gathas in Praise of Amida Buddha. And in this Gatha, in the third and fourth verses, Shinran writes, Amida has passed through 10 kalpas now since realizing Buddhahood. Dharma body's wheel of light is without bound, shining on the blind and ignorant of the world. The light of wisdom exceeds all measure, and every finite living being receives this illumination that is like the dawn. So take refuge in Amida, the true and real light. I wanted to share this particular passage. In that, and this is found throughout Shinnan's writing, and I think it's probably it can be found in any Buddhist literature, Buddhist writing, Buddhist sutras, that the teachings of the Buddha are about us, as human beings, what we can do. And Shinnan's understanding was that we are foolish beings. Bombu, we are unable to, on our own, cultivate the mind that sees things as they are. And that we are fortunate that the teachings are about all of us, not just those who are capable, who have the ability to cultivate the mind, who can be disciplined, who has the ability to fulfill the practices that would awaken the mind. But it's for everybody, for all beings, regardless of abilities or skills. Here in the second verse, the light of wisdom exceeds all measure, and every finite living being, all beings, not just a group of people, not just certain part of the world, not just Buddhists, but all beings receive this illumination that is like the dawn. We only need to kind of become aware of this, think about, to reflect upon, to be mindful of what we are receiving. Again, it doesn't matter who we are. And the direction that this is pointed at is to all of us, regardless, again, of who we are, what our background is, what our abilities or skills. It is for all beings. When Shakyamuni Buddha got up from the tree of enlightenment, it was to share what he had experienced as a human being, what he had experienced, and his willingness to share that with others. Not just those who agreed with him, not just those who were of the same caste as him, the same strata in society, not just those who were of his background, his place in society, or his not just his family or but for everybody. And we can describe all of these categories, and I'm kind of thinking because what these categories might have been in the time of Shakyamuni Buddha, and the main category was in this caste system, and it wasn't just for the nobles, it wasn't just for the ascetics, it was for everyone. And Shakyamuni Buddha was willing to share what he had experienced. And I think sometimes we think that Buddhism is something that helps us to become better Buddhists. But I don't think Buddhism is about becoming Buddhist. Buddhism, I think, is about becoming human, most human. And whether those becoming human, we become better people, or as in becoming human, we become more aware of our limitations, and becoming human, truly human, acknowledging that as a human being, I share with others the experiences that affect my life, that things that are important, that have meaning and significance in my life. That as a human being, there is a common experience that we share. It doesn't matter where we come from, what our background might be. Once, many years ago, I was asked to do a class at, I think it was at Mission College, an evening class. So these are people who were, it was a religious survey class. So I was asked to come in and do a couple of nights of introducing Buddhism to this class. And in this class, as we were discussing, and it was maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I asked, what religious traditions were represented in the classroom, and as always, people are reluctant to talk about things like that. So I kind of encouraged them, and some of them said they were Christian, of course, and Muslim, and of course, as a Buddhist, I was there. And so as we kind of listed the different religious traditions that people came from, I also asked, so what other traditions, might they be that we might think of? And so we listed many different religious traditions. And then I asked, right, what's common to all of these traditions? So whether it's Islam or Judaism or Christianity or Buddhism or Taoism, what is common, undeniably common to all of these traditions? And there were a lot of suggestions, a lot of things. And Buddhism talks about difficulties. So there are kind of difficulties, different traditions. Buddhism talks about enlightenment, and enlightenment isn't common in all traditions of religious traditions. And so we went through a series of questions and lining up different kinds of things. But all of the things that they suggested were not common to all of the different traditions. They're certainly common in some traditions that shared these ideas, but not all of them. And so I still had the question, what is common to all of these traditions that is indisputable, that you cannot, there's no kind of debate about what these traditions all have in common? And what they all have in common, regardless of what tradition we come from, whether it's a religious tradition, a philosophical tradition, or no tradition at all, what is common in all of these is a human being. The human being is what is addressed in all of these traditions. It is a human being that is common to all of these. The foolish human being, the finite, every finite living human being is addressed to some extent in all of these traditions. It's a human being that is common, right? It's what we are able to identify through these various traditions, recognizing that, oh yeah, that's a human being that is also being addressed in that tradition. Now, how it's being addressed may be different. Different questions, different solutions in all of these different traditions. But it's a human being. So the human being has these common experiences that the different traditions are trying to address. Nowadays, there's so many things that are happening in the world. we kind of lose track maybe. We draw into ourselves and we draw into the kinds of things that are familiar to us because it feels comfortable and safe. I don't have to go out and think about or question how I'm seeing the world. I'm comfortable within the boundaries that are familiar to me. People call this siloing, like a silo, a grain silo, where everything in that is the same. But then when you are in a silo, you can't hear what's going on next door. You don't know what's happening there. We're only about here within this group. And Buddhism can do that too. Buddhism can also be siloing. Jodo Shinshu can also be siloing if we only think about what's happening within Jodo Shinshu. But Buddhism is not about that. It's not about being Jodo Shinshu. It's not about being Buddhist. I think, at least, Buddhism is about being human, recognizing our limitations and the effects our actions have on the world around us. That we have more in common to share with one another as human beings than what defines us within our categories, our siloing, our religious traditions, or societies, or even towns and villages. We know that here, even in our country, some villages out in the country have a very unique perspective. In some ways, as we think about the election that's coming up, we're divided into categories: Democrat, Republican, West Coast, East Coast, Central U.S. There's all these categories that define us and shouldn't. But we should be willing to recognize that as human beings, we have a great deal in common, that we have a great deal to share. The most recent shooting, and these kinds of things happen, unfortunately, all too often. With the George Floyd and the start of this demand for racial equality, and the most recent shooting of Jacob Blake. I was watching the news and listening to his mother speaking to a news conference, press conference. And one of the things that really struck me was her plea that as human beings we need to kind of heal. Not to separate further, not to say you were wrong or you were wrong in what you did, but that we need to heal. But in order for that to happen, we need to be able to see each other as human beings. We need to be able to recognize that the things we experience as human beings, the difficulties and joys, are shared by others. That if we can begin to see the other as ourselves, then we can begin to bridge that gap that separates us. But it's difficult to do. It's not an easy thing to do. But if we are to move forward, we need to make that effort. Not to fall into categories that are comfortable and familiar, into communities that affirm what I think, but we'll be willing to step outside of that and to be able to have dialogue, conversations about what our concerns are, what the concerns, and listen to the concerns of others. Buddhism is not about, I don't think, at least I don't think, Buddhism is not about being Buddhist. That we learn all of the rules of Buddhism and that makes us a Buddhist. And it's like, I can read a recipe, it doesn't make me a cook. And it certainly doesn't make me a chef because I can read a recipe and remember what all of the ingredients are and what I need to do. It doesn't make me a chef. It doesn't make me a cook. We need to understand that the teachings of the Buddha speaks to who we are as human beings. That the difficulties that we experience result from the narrowness of our views of the world. That if we can begin to look outside of that, we'll begin to, first of all, acknowledge that we see the world in this way. And then we can begin to look outside maybe. Maybe just peek a little bit at first, but begin to acknowledge the importance of people who we might not recognize. And it's that inability to recognize the other as myself that so many of our difficulties, our societal difficulties, emerge. If you consider, all of the kinds of unrest that exists in our world, it's a result of one group of people not acknowledging another group of people. And through that inability to acknowledge, difficulties arise and become embedded in the way that we think about the other. I'm no exception. I'm no person who is free from those kinds of prejudices. But if we are to move toward a community, a society in which the aspirations and hopes that we all have for a better life, a life that is meaningful and a life that has opportunities for us to appreciate the world in which we live. We can only begin to do that if we can begin to acknowledge that the other is like myself. An individual with whom I can have a conversation. And again, it's no easy matter. It's easy to say. That's why I think we struggle so much with the teachings of the Buddha, putting it into practice. It's no easy matter. When we were reading Sambutsuge, I was talking to Kathy. Well, actually, Kathy and I were text messaging before a service this morning. And she asked me a question, and I said, well, she asked me about and my reply was, because it's the penultimate day of August. I shouldn't have done that, because penultimate, while we were chanting sutra, this word penultimate came up into my head and I couldn't shake it. And I don't know, it kind of threw me off, and I didn't turn the page right, and I got lost during reading of Sambutsuge. Fortunately, Mikami Sensei was able to keep up, and not keep up, but to continue, and I had to kind of find my place again. And then I started thinking, I thought about something else that I wasn't, and then it was a total wreck. as human beings, if we can begin to recognize the other as ourselves, we can begin to appreciate what they are experiencing. Again, it's not easy. It's not easy to do, especially in the craziness that we are experiencing in this time. But in that, we hear voices like uh, Jacob Blake's mother. We need to heal. We cannot simply let it go. We need to find a way in which we can heal these fissures that are splitting us apart. We need to do the work that can move us forward, that affirms life. Today, as we join in this service on this penultimate day of August, penultimate day sounds like ultimate something, right? So it's really something fabulous. Penultimate is the second to the last. So if I'm in a race with 5 other people, and I'm penultimate, I will be the second to the last coming in on a race. It's not really wonderful. But if there were only 2 of us, no. Yeah, if there were only 2 of us and I was the penultimate, that would make me first place, right? Oh, never mind. Think about that. Penultimate means second to the last. So if there are 2 of us racing, I'm penultimate. Yeah, that would make me first. So the mind is a fabulous thing. Anyway, thank you for being here this morning. The teachings of the Buddha, again, I think anyway, are not about being Buddhist. It's about being human and how we relate to one another as human beings. That the difficulties that we experience, cause and experience, result from our inability to see things as they are. And if we can begin to cultivate the mind that sees things as it is, as they are, we can begin to address and resolve the difficulties that we cause and experience. Thank you all for being here this morning and joining us for this service. Next Sunday, September the 6th, 5 o'clock in the evening, and we've sent out information through our email, and hopefully you've received this information, but in a joint service with San Mateo Buddhist Temple, we will have a special service, and the service will be live streamed through our YouTube channel. So what you're watching today, you'll be able to participate in this special service. And again, it's next week, Sunday, September the 6th at 5 o'clock. And Reverend Gie Sasaki will be our speaker. And Sasaki Sensei will speak in Japanese, and Reverend Henry Adams of the San Mateo Buddhist Temple will translate for him. And Sasaki Sensei is a Shikyo, so he has a special status in teaching Buddhism. So it should be an interesting evening hearing Sensei's Dharma talk. And again, it'll be in Japanese, but translated by Adam Sensei. So even if you don't understand Japanese, it'll be an opportunity to hear something, hear a Dharma message. Oh, and Sasaki Sensei is going to Zoom to us from Japan. And Adam Sensei will translate from the San Mateo Temple. and then we'll be here in our Hondo, streaming through YouTube. So please come and participate in this special service next week, Sunday, 5 o'clock. And it'll be again broadcast through our regular YouTube channel. Again, I want to thank you for joining us. Next week Sunday is the last service of our summer schedule. Following next Sunday, the following week, the 13th, everything will come back online. We'll have our busy Sunday morning. Hopefully, you'll take advantage of the many programs that the BitSwing continues to offer through Zoom and through Google Meets and the Scouting Organization, the YBA, Dharma School, various organizations all meeting through Zoom or through the Google Meets. So please become engaged, participate in the programs that the BitSwing has to offer. Again, thank you very much for joining us this morning. If we'll please conclude with Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you, everybody.